May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts together find their way into the heart of God this morning. All right, y'all ready? Down here, afraid of heights, not a fan. My parents are an artist and a musician who met and married in Provincetown in the 80s. When I tell people this, there's usually a little moment as though I make more sense, which I do. Their wedding was officiated by a lesbian UU minister, a colleague of Robin's, in fact. And the reception was at a restaurant at the end of the wharf with food and drink provided by all of the local fishermen and eateries and bars my parents had worked at and befriended in their time in town. I myself have been in many weddings, 11 at last count, not including those I've been hired to sing at, which is both a testament to the kind of friendships I've been lucky enough to cultivate and maintain, and wildly expensive. But my complaints are few. After all, it's a wedding that brought me to this church, and I am happy to share in the joy of people I love. And should I ever choose to marry in the future, there are probably upwards of 100 people who owe me a household appliance. So, given the time frame of me taking on this speaking engagement, which is Friday afternoon, for those wondering, and my decidedly non-pastoral credentials, I've decided to think about this little reflection sort of like a toast, which also fits because of all of the toast I've ever given, I've literally never finished one earlier than the middle of cocktail hour. And like all good toasts, I'll begin with a "for those of you who don't know me" statement, because while I'm so grateful to know many of you through singing and sitting with your children on the chancel, and perhaps by the plethora of candy or sparkly squishy things in my office, which is its own ministry, you may or may not know that my path to standing anywhere near a pulpit falls somewhere between politely unexpected and downright laughable. Though I suppose an art-centric P-Town baby upbringing wasn't counterintuitive to organized religion per se, the most my parents really taught me was a vague, culturally Christian understanding of major holidays, an emphasis on treating people the way you wanted to be treated, and how to throw a great party. But I was a sensitive, deeply empathic kid with a lot of curiosity about the world, and so I felt a draw to spirituality early and often, though I didn't necessarily have a frame of reference for what that looked like. There was my ego that wanted a pretty First Communion dress and to not miss out on whatever gossip was happening in CCD class, and for everyone to be really impressed that I could hit the high notes in O Holy Night, which, wildly enough, I've still never sung as a solo in my tenure here. No, I haven't. Not that I have a problem with that. A part of me yearned for the comfort that faith seemed to provide, even if my understanding was heavily influenced by the sound of music, and wondering if running away to the convent down the street would solve my prepubescent problems. Somehow this idea totally ignored that Maria left the convent to find her purpose, but I still wanted to sing in those hills. And then there was a part of my childhood brain that thought if I believed hard enough, I would be magical. I can't say I necessarily thought this belief needed to be in God. Maybe it was believing in myself or in my abilities or just focusing hard enough, which is particularly ironic being an adult diagnosed with ADHD. But I had read enough stories of miracles and special children imbued with the power to open cabinets and pour cereal with their minds and felt like, yeah, I'm special too. I could probably make that happen. If I had enough faith, I would have the power to control things, no? Sound familiar? But is that faith or expectation? Good discernment or a checklist to receive what we deserve? I think I am breaking some of the rules of homily writing by revealing my point at the beginning. But when I took on this very last-minute task, I left a voice note for one of my dearest friends, Kelly, who has taught me maybe more about religion than anyone else and currently serves as a high school campus minister. She said that she is rarely moved by being preached at, and rather she wants to hear a homilist or storyteller look inward. In the case of this passage, to acknowledge the ways in which we ourselves have been wolves in sheep's clothing, when we have assumed that we've built houses on rock rather than humbling ourselves to know it's sand, when we have clung to righteousness instead of relationship. Matthew warns us of false prophets, but I would argue any type of prophecy is complicated. Tempting, of course, because if we know the future, even a dire one, we can prepare for it. But truth-seeking and truth-telling are not easy or pretty jobs. In Greek mythology, the priestess Cassandra was given the power to tell the future, but subsequently cursed that no one would ever believe her prophecies. One story tells of how she tried to warn the celebrating army of the enemy hiding inside the Trojan horse, only to be insulted, mocked, and stopped by them when she tried in desperation to take a torch and axe to it herself. She was endlessly frustrated with this gift, branded as a liar and a mad woman, and locked away and guarded by her family. What does a false prophet look like then? Someone who tells us something we don't want to hear, or someone who doesn't look like they'd be trusted with the truth? Which is scarier, the truth from a wolf or a platitude from a sheep? I don't know that the unhoused addict on the street raving about the end of days is the person I want my news from, but I know that that mega church pastor selling $100 plots to heaven are not the rocks to build my house on either. Have you seen that recent news story, selling $100 plots to heaven? Fun. This is why people don't like church. We love our church. The moments I have experienced God most profoundly have not looked how I expected. In fact, they have been the opposite. Not a moment of clarity in my humble, rule-following supplication, but more often a violently humbling slap upside the head. Truth is uncomfortable. Despite my lack of any formal childhood religion, I ended up attending Worcester's College of the Holy Cross for undergrad, because my father, the musician, had given up the majority of his creative career to take a job in the kitchens that would earn me free tuition. I was furious about this because I wanted my parents to take out loans so I could go to a very expensive musical theater conservatory in New York City, and my dad was furious about that because of course he was. That's an insane request. So I ended up at Holy Cross, because as my dear Jack Scalise once said at Pizza Church, maybe the best compromise is where no one is happy. And I wish he was here. And I pouted my way through every required church service and thumbed my nose at the religion requirement by taking a Buddhism seminar. That'll show you, Jesuits. But my senior year, I felt called, or perhaps challenged, to attend one of Holy Cross's most legendary programs, a 5-day silent retreat called the Spiritual Exercises. Don't worry, among the people who were also shocked I would attempt 5 days of silence include my sign language professor, who was deaf. You, 5 days, no voice, never. I went, Ying, you can't hear me? Whatever. In a way, though, taking on this silence felt almost like being 7 again, scrunching up my face and testing if my magic finger was working yet, hoping that if I showed up and listened, prophecy had to fill the silence, right? And so I manufactured these moments of faith. I did everything right. I was silent as hell. The 3 years of deaf studies actually really gave me a leg up on that front, I'll be honest. I picked an angel painted on the chapel ceiling and stared at her like if I did it hard enough, she'd float down to me. I went out to a field in the middle of the night and rolled in the grass and spun in circles, trying to conjure up childhood, convinced that my nonchalance would make Mufasa assemble in the stars with some divine purpose. In our time at the retreat house, which was also a home for retired Jesuits, a priest had passed away, and we were invited to pay our respects on our last morning. I knelt at his casket, and after a few moments, I heard a slight ticking. Was this it? A sign, finally? I was terrified but awestruck to be sent this reminder that time is precious and fleeting. I had won the retreat. God was still speaking. And then I leaned a little bit closer to the priest in his casket, and I realized he was still wearing a watch. It is also worth noting, just because of the liturgy today, that I actually did this retreat again when I was in grad school. And even with one humbling in my pocket, I stumbled upon the exact same ego traps. And immediately upon returning to New York, had the most spiritual experience of my week with a literal stranger on a bus. You know, like, what if God was one of us? I came home and I called my friend Christine and I sobbed, what am I, the freaking reluctant prophet Kate or something? To which she replied, perfectly deadpan, all prophets are reluctant, Kate. If man plans and God laughs, then the bedrock of my faith has been all the times I've been forced to laugh at the irony of my own hubris in the ways I've asked God to squeeze into my little box, then rather than allowing the expanse of his goodness to surprise me. God is unfathomable, and yet every time I'm out here thinking this will be the time I catch him in the act. I have been joking to Robin lately that you do not have to be good, from the Mary Oliver poem, Wild Geese. It starts, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. And when we hear this gospel reading from Matthew, we are, of course, so quick to claim ourselves as the sheep, as the faithful, as diligent judges of what trees bear the right fruit, and intelligent builders of homes on bedrock. How many of us think we still need to please God to be worthy? Be honest, how many of you are still like, but why does the prodigal son get his share when the rest of the brothers stayed? Sure, nice of you to chase the one, but what about us 99 left behind? Didn't we prophesy in your name and expel demons in your name and do miracles in your name? Be it the prosperity gospel or capitalism or American exceptionalism or the much more innocuous and well-intentioned idea of karma, there is still some part of most of us that believes that if we are good people, we deserve good things. So too often we are surprised and question the bedrock of our faith when that is not in fact how things work out. Some people do not have the privilege of building a house on bedrock. Some people do not have the privilege of building a house at all. They are left to weather the storm on the beach. I think of the Provincetown prophets of my childhood, cheeks pinched by every wharf rat and drag queen in town, learning early that some of the most loving people would not be polite society's idea of a good role model. And yet those shoeless, toothless, cross-dressing hippies built that beautiful city that raised me. Not a city of angels, but a city of man, in hospitality, in art, and acceptance. When I sent Kelly, my campus minister friend, an overview of what I hope to talk about in this semi-sermon, emphasis on the semi, she forwarded along a poem she uses a lot in her work with teens and their parents. It is called Prayer for Werewolves by Stephanie Burt. Someone will probably love you for who you are. If not, you'll still find friends who, given time or given warning, will probably gather around you, hold your hands, and wrap you in soft coats and blankets till the violence inside your body ends. Someone will probably love you for who you are, and not just for who you labor to be. Maybe you're lost in your skin today. Maybe you're burning and wish you could tear it all off. Please don't. You are variously a marvel, an athlete, a wilderness, a source of warmth, and a way to learn from fear. When you have claws, your claws are yours. Your ears bristle and are yours. Your irises are citrine, pure and yours. They let you see through smog and pine thickets and into the future where you need no chains to feel secure, and someone will probably love you for who you are. Then you will know each other's scents and nuzzle or lope together. But for now, you have friends who are not going anywhere. Please stay here. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves, continues Wild Geese. I don't know that this is the gospel's point, but for my part, perhaps faith is not when I push myself to be a sheep, but when I am able to howl at the moon and know that God will love me anyways. Perhaps it is not about being good, but being honest. This is a faith tradition built on forgiveness, on the assumption that, yes, we will make mistakes and fall. When I don't pretend to be what I am not, when I don't need to question the goodness or badness of the fruit I bear, I can pray that my house will stand, but perhaps more importantly, that I can build a new house if it doesn't. Thank you for being a home for me, First Church, no matter how the sand shifts. Blessings and cheers and amen.